Yesterday, I picked up my phone from a wireless charger, and for a split second, I wondered if my nightstand had developed supernatural powers. You place your phone on what looks like a fancy coaster, and electricity shows up inside it. No cable connected, no visible transfer. Just energy moving through a tiny air gap like it is nothing. Most people use it every day and still have zero clue what is actually happening. In the next 10 minutes, I am going to break down how wireless charging works using one simple model that will make everything click. You will understand the invisible dance between your charger and your phone, and you will also understand why it is not quite as magical as it feels. Quick favor before we dive in, if you like tech explained in a way that feels obvious instead of exhausting, subscribe. I make these topics calm, simple, and actually usable. Here are 3 things happening in the real world that prove this basic idea is everywhere. First, the power grid depends on the same electricity and magnetism relationship we are about to use, especially in generators and transformers. Second, those giant electromagnetic cranes at junkyards lift heavy metal by turning electricity into magnetic force. Third, many everyday devices use magnetism to move energy or motion around without you ever seeing it, and wireless charging is basically a neat, safe, consumer-friendly version of that. Quick test for you, put your hand near a wireless charging pad that is plugged in but not charging. Sometimes you will feel a little warmth or notice the pad is not perfectly cold. That is not your phone charging. That is the system using a small amount of standby power, and in many cases, it is occasionally checking for a compatible device. Not full power blasting into the room, but enough activity that you can detect it. By the end of this explanation, you will see wireless charging for what it really is. A conversation between 2 copper coils speaking the language of magnetism. One coil talks, the other listens. And once you see that, the whole thing stops being magic and starts being a very elegant trick of physics. Most people imagine wireless charging as a mysterious energy beam shooting from the pad into the phone, like invisible electricity jumping the gap in tiny lightning bolts. That sounds reasonable because you have seen sparks before, but wireless charging does not work like sparking. It is not electricity leaping through air. It is something calmer and much more controlled. The real secret is the relationship between electricity and magnetism. When electricity moves, it creates a magnetic field around it. When a magnetic field changes near a wire, it can create electricity in that wire. That is not a vibe or a theory people argue about. It is one of the core rules that makes modern technology possible. So here is the simple model. Imagine 2 friends trying to communicate across a room using a special language. Friend 1 is the charging pad. Friend 2 is your phone. They cannot touch, but they can still influence each other. Inside the charging pad is a coil of copper wire. Picture a flat cinnamon roll made of shiny copper. When you plug the pad into power, electricity starts moving through that coil. But it is not just steady electricity. The pad deliberately switches the current back and forth very quickly. That back and forth motion is the whole point. When the current flips direction rapidly, the magnetic field around the coil also changes rapidly. So instead of a boring, steady magnet, the pad creates a wiggling magnetic field that rises above the surface of the pad like an invisible bubble. It is not a dangerous bubble. It is more like a gentle, magnetic handshake zone. Now, inside the back of your phone is another coil of copper wire. Smaller, but similar idea. That phone coil is not connected to the wall. It is sitting there, waiting like a receiver that knows exactly what kind of magnetic handshake to listen for. When you place your phone on the pad, the phone coil enters the pad's changing magnetic field, and this is where the magic feeling comes from. That changing magnetic field pushes electrons in the phone coil into motion. You just created electricity inside the phone without a physical plug. That process is called electromagnetic induction. Here is the plain English version. A changing magnetic field near a wire can make electricity appear in that wire. It is the same basic principle used in many power systems, just scaled down and made safe for a nightstand. So the charger does not throw electricity into your phone. It creates a changing magnetic field. The phone takes that changing magnetic field and turns it back into electricity. Now your phone has to do something useful with that electricity. The current coming from induction is not automatically perfect for charging a battery. So your phone uses internal electronics to convert and manage it. Then it feeds the energy into the battery. where it gets stored as chemical energy. That is the same end goal as wired charging. The only difference is how the energy crosses the gap. If you want the whole journey in one sentence, it is this. Wall power becomes a changing magnetic field in the pad. The changing magnetic field becomes electricity in the phone, and that electricity becomes stored battery energy. Now, the obvious question, if this is so cool, why does your phone have to sit right on the pad? Why can it not charge from across the room like Wi-Fi? Because this is near-field magnetism, not long-range broadcasting. The magnetic field used for wireless charging drops off very quickly with distance. The further you get from the coil, the weaker the effect becomes. That is why alignment matters. Your phone and the pad are basically trying to line up two invisible loops so the handshake is strong enough to be useful. This is also why some charging pads get picky if your phone is slightly off-center, and why thick cases can sometimes cause problems. The energy transfer depends on how well those two coils line up and how close they are. Now, another practical question. Why does wireless charging often feel slower than using a cable? Because it is usually less efficient. When you use a cable, electricity has a direct path into your phone with fewer losses. With wireless charging, you are converting electricity to magnetism and back to electricity, and every conversion loses some energy as heat. Also, misalignment increases losses. That is why the pad and the phone can feel warm. Some of what you paid for as electricity did not become battery charge, it became heat. Efficiency varies by device and charger, and newer systems can be quite good. But as a general rule, a cable is still the speed champion. Wireless charging is the convenience champion. Now let us talk about the part people worry about. Is it dangerous to have invisible magnetic fields near your body? In normal everyday use, wireless charging is designed to be safe. The fields are localized and relatively low power compared to many other sources of electromagnetic energy you already live with. Also, common wireless charging standards include safety features that detect compatible devices, regulate power, and in many cases reduce power when things are misaligned or when a foreign object is detected between the phone and the pad. If you have a medical device like a pacemaker, the smart move is to follow your medical device guidance and keep it a reasonable distance from chargers and magnets, because different devices can have different sensitivities. But for the average person charging a phone on a desk or nightstand, this is a controlled, consumer, safety-tested technology. Now, here is what makes wireless charging genuinely useful, even with its trade-offs. First, it is easy. You drop your phone on the pad and you are done. No fumbling for a port in the dark. Second, it reduces wear and tear on charging ports. Ports are tiny mechanical openings that collect dust, get stressed, and can fail over time. Wireless charging avoids that whole issue. Third, it makes charging more automatic. If your pad lives on your desk, you naturally top up throughout the day without thinking about it. That is good for people who are always hovering around low battery. But if you need a fast charge before you leave the house, or you care about squeezing maximum efficiency out of every watt, a cable is still the better tool. This is not one method replacing the other. It is two methods for two different priorities. It is also worth knowing that wireless charging is getting better. Designs improve coil alignment, reduce heat, and increase power while staying safe. Some systems can work through cases more reliably. Some designs guide you into the right placement with magnets. The engineering goal is always the same. Make the conversation between coils clearer with less wasted energy. Now let us rewind and make sure the mental model is locked in. Wireless charging is not electricity jumping through air. It is magnetism acting as a middleman. The charging pad creates a rapidly changing magnetic field using a coil of wire. The phone captures that changing magnetic field with its own coil and turns it into electricity. The phone's electronics clean it up and feed it into the battery. That is it, a conversation between two coils. So the next time you place your phone on a charging pad, you will know exactly what is happening under the plastic. Your charger is speaking in magnetism. Your phone is listening with copper. And the gap between them is not empty space anymore. It is a small zone where physics does a very old trick in a very modern way. And if this explanation made wireless charging feel obvious, subscribe. I will keep turning everyday tech mysteries into ideas you can explain to someone else in 1 minute.